Hi everyone, I'm sitting here in front of one of the original posters for Newsfront. The poster produced by New Yorker Films for the American release of the film back in 1979. Newsfront was shot in 1977. It hit Australian cinemas in August 1978. But by the early 1990s, we discovered that the printing materials of the film had faded. The sound and image was in danger of not being able to be used to make further prints. And as a result, Franz Vandenberg, the assistant editor on the film back in the 70s, embarked on a worldwide trip to try and find the sound and image elements that were missing. And this search took him to Paris, to California, to New York, where he finally, in a box at the back, in the back room of New Yorker Films, he found the missing reel, reel 4, and we were able to put together a cinema version of Newsfront back in the early 90s. But what you're watching here tonight is a further step in the restoration of the film, because last year the National Film Archive worked with producer David Elphick to produce a digital cinema print of the film. So tonight you're the first, I think, audience in Australia to view this digital cinema print, and hopefully now the film will live on for decades to come, centuries even. Film was made back in 1978. I was 1977 and 78. I was 27 when David Elphick asked me to direct Bob Ellis's screenplay. A lot of controversy about that screenplay. We had $505,000 to make the film, and not a penny more because of the financing at the time. And the script, which was fantastic, was unfortunately too long for our shooting period of 45 days. So I was given the job of editing the script to the film that you've seen tonight. Bob Ellis, perhaps rightly, had felt that his film had been decimated, his script had been decimated, but necessity is often the mother of invention, and I sort of, in thinking back on the scenes that we cut, yes, they were a loss, but yes, the film was more robust and maybe a better film for the cuts that were forced on us by the financing. It was an amazing era for Australian cinema, because Australians were in love with themselves. By that I mean, like babies, they were fascinated by the mirror image that Australian cinema provided them up on the silver screen. There were a series of historical films that were a success. Breaker Morant, Picnic at Hanging Rock, Caddy, Newsfront, to name just a few. My Brilliant Career, another one. And Australians flocked to their cinema at that time because so many of the films reflected on Australian history, and asked questions about what it meant to be an Australian. Questions that had been asked in our literature, but for Australian cinema audiences, it was a first-time experience. The film recouped its production costs in about 8 weeks and went on to sell all around the world. And I can remember the enthusiasm, the excitement, the giddy excitement with which the film was received back in 1978. A far cry from the rather blasé response to a lot of Australian films nowadays. Of course, Australian filmmakers are even more than ever beleaguered in their attempts to publicise their films. Interesting device that we used back in 1978 was that we made sure we screened the film overseas before its Australian release. So Australian audiences could be comforted by the fact that Newsfront was already opening the London Film Festival, the first Australian film to screen at the New York Film Festival, and had been sold to many, many countries before its Australian release. And I think this really helped to focus attention on the movie back in Australia. Mark's asked me a few other questions. Most of them I've covered. He did ask me also, was I overwhelmed as a first-time director juggling so many elements? Yes, I was. Every single day. In the film, you've seen the Newsreel cinema in Market Street, Sydney, next to the State Theatre, where my mother used to take me, actually. When she went shopping, she'd park me in that Newsreel theatre where I'd watch the newsreels. But we were filming there on the first day of filming for Newsfront, and I rolled up in my car, and I'm driving down the street and looking around and seeing all these vintage vehicles and trucks of equipment and all these extras, and I don't know why it didn't hit me what they were here for, but when it did, I felt terribly afraid because they were all there waiting for me to say action. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the film, or if you're about to see it, that you do enjoy it, and that it lasts for a long, long time to come.